Shalom, I'm Eddie Chumney of Hebraic Heritage Ministries, and we welcome you to this week's Focus Israel Report. In this week's report, we're going to be sharing with you regarding the current status of the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, as well as the current situation with Syria and Iran. First, an overview of the peace process. On April the 17th, Palestinian officials will deliver a letter from Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The letter will blame Israel for the failure of the talks that took place between Israel and the Palestinians in Jordan this past January. The Palestinians will only agree to have direct negotiations with Israel in the future if Israel quits building Jewish homes in the West Bank and East Jerusalem and releases Palestinian prisoners arrested prior to the 1994 Oslo Accords. The Palestinians will give Israel 1 month to agree to these demands. If Israel doesn't agree to the Palestinian demands, they have threatened to renew their efforts to have recognition of a Palestinian state based upon 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital at the United Nations, and they will seek this recognition through the UN General Assembly. The Palestinians are discussing that they will make this proposal in either May or June. Israel is expected to reply to the Palestinian letter by Benjamin Netanyahu requesting that there be direct negotiations between him and Mahmoud Abbas without any preconditions, in that in any peace agreement that Israel would sign with the Palestinians, that the Palestinians would recognize Israel as a Jewish state and the security of Israel would be maintained. The Palestinians are saying that they will reject Netanyahu's proposed offer for direct negotiations. Next, we're going to be sharing with you regarding the current situation with Syria, and it is as follows. April the 12th was the deadline for a UN-brokered ceasefire in Syria. The Syrian government agreed to the ceasefire based upon the following conditions. Number one, that the Syrian government could defend themselves against the opponents of the government if the opponents continued their resistance. Number two, the Syrian government wanted written guarantees from the opposition to lay down their weapons before the Syrian government would withdraw from various cities. In explaining their demands, Syria said that it will not allow a repeat of what had happened during the Arab League's observer mission in January, where Assad pulled back his armed forces from cities and their surroundings only to see rebels flood the areas vacated by government troops. This offer was rejected by the rebels. Syria is a strategic battleground between Russia and the United States. Russia supports the Syrian government and the United States supports the opposition. In reality, the battle in Syria is a battle between Sunni and Shiite Muslims over control and influence in the Middle East. The Arab Spring was mainly uprisings against Arab political leaders with the goal to establish the rule of the Sunni Muslim Brotherhood in these countries. Sunni Muslims want to remove the government of Bashar Assad, who is a member of the minority Alawite sect of Shiite Islam. The United States is supporting the Sunni Muslims over the Shiite Muslims in this religious war. In doing so, the United States wants to weaken the Shiite Muslim axis of Syria, Iran, and Hezbollah in Lebanon. As a result, both Syria and Iran is a strategic battleground in this sectarian war between Sunni and Shiite Muslims. The Sunni-Shiite schism goes back more than 1,000 years. starting with the dispute over the Islamic Caliphate following the death of the Prophet Muhammad in 632 and carrying through to the conflict between the Shiite dynasty in Persia and the Sunni Ottoman dynasty in Turkey in the 16th and 17th centuries. At greater stake in Syria is the national interest of Saudi Arabia as the conservative leader of the Arab Sunni world. A consolidation of Iran's grip over Syria would transcend the Shiite influence over the entire area between the Persian Gulf and the Mediterranean Sea. Therefore, for Saudi Arabia, it is critical to pull Syria out of Iran's influence, which explains why the Saudi Arabian government is supportive of arming the rebels in Syria and hoping for the toppling of the Assad government. There is no love lost between Iran and the Sunni Muslim Brotherhood, who is a regional Islamic Sunni movement whose local parties will certainly form the makeup of governments in Egypt, Libya, and Tunisia. In the wake of the possible failure of the UN Arab-sponsored plan for a ceasefire in Syria being negotiated by Kofi Annan, the leading Sunni countries of Turkey and Saudi Arabia now have a great interest in bringing down the Assad government. These are some of the underlying political issues that are connected with the current conflict in Syria and Iran. Next, we're going to share with you regarding the current situation with Iran. It is as follows. Nuclear talks between Iran and the P5+1 countries. They would be the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, consisting of Russia, China, Britain, France, and the United States, along with Germany, are scheduled to begin on April the 13th in Istanbul, Turkey. U.S. President Barack Obama said that he's willing to accept an Iranian civilian nuclear program if Iran agrees to international demands to prove that it will not build a nuclear weapon. However, Obama warned that time is running out for a peaceful settlement and the United States would increase sanctions on Iran if the talks failed. Debka, an Israeli intelligence and news gathering source, reports that the United States and Israel have agreed to allow Iran to have enriched uranium up to 3.5% if they do not enrich to 20%, which could be quickly converted to weapons grade. Israel, along with the United States and European diplomats, are in agreement that the following demands need to be made upon Iran in order for talks to be successful. Number 1, an immediate closing and dismantling of the Fordo underground nuclear facility deep under a mountain near the Iranian city of Qom. Number 2, a halt in the production of uranium enriched to 20%. Number 3, the shipment of existing enriched uranium stockpiles out of Iran. Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad stated that Iran would not surrender its nuclear rights even under the most difficult pressure. Furthermore, he said that Iran has enough foreign currency to survive Western economic sanctions for several years. Debka reports that Iran will offer their own initiative at these meetings. The Iranian proposal would consist of the following. Number 1, that Iran will continue to enrich low-grade 3.5% uranium in unlimited quantities. Number 2, Iran will not agree to remove enriched uranium outside its country. And number 3, Iran is prepared for a deal whereby the 6 powers endorse Iran's right to enrich as much high-grade 20% enriched uranium as it wishes, based upon the following formula: that a joint panel of the 6 powers in Iran will determine the amounts required to meet the needs of its reactor and the production of isotopes for medical research. And also, Iran will sell its oversupply of enriched uranium on the international market and become the world's #1 exporter of 20% enriched uranium. A further proposal of Iran is that it will reject demands to shut down the underground enrichment plant at Fordo, but agree to sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty's additional protocol, which would permit the International Atomic Energy Agency's inspectors to make spot checks at all suspect nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordo, based upon one provision, and that is that the six powers must also require Israel to sign the Non-Proliferation Treaty plus the additional protocol. If Israel doesn't sign both parts of this treaty, neither will Iran endorse the additional protocol. Finally, Iran has decided to preempt a European oil embargo scheduled to begin on July the 1st by stating that they will no longer sell oil to Britain, France, Germany, Spain, and Greece. Well, this concludes this week's update, where we shared with you regarding the current situation with the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, wherein the Palestinians are planning to deliver a letter to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel on April the 17th, blaming Israel for failure of the peace talks and demanding that the Palestinians will not agree to direct negotiations with Israel unless Israel quits building Jewish homes in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem. Israel is expected to reply to this letter by requesting for direct negotiations with the Palestinians without any preconditions. The Palestinians are planning to reject Israel's proposal. In Syria, a UN-sponsored ceasefire has now been initiated. Syria has agreed to this ceasefire. However, they want guarantees that the opposition will put down their arms and they will not come into the areas and try to regain control of those places where the Syrian government would withdraw their troops. As a result, the ceasefire is quite shaky. The significance of the battle that's going on in Syria is that Syria is a battleground between East and West, between Sunni Muslims and Shiite Muslims. That Russia and China is supporting Syria and Iran, meaning that they are supporting the Shiite Muslims over the Western-backed Sunni Muslims. The United States would like to see Assad in Syria be removed from power and weaken the Iranian Shiite influence over the Middle East. So while now there are efforts to resolve the dispute in Syria and Iran diplomatically, it looks like ultimately that in the fullness of time, that because of the interests of the various parties, that this will not be able to be solved diplomatically, but will in time result in war. While Iran has agreed to nuclear talks with 6 world powers, they are not willing to give up their nuclear program nor cease from enriching uranium at their underground facility near the city of Qom. They want to continue to have the right to enrich uranium as they see fit, and any agreement that they make to diminish their nuclear program, they want Israel to agree to a similar proposal as Iran regarding Israel's nuclear stockpile. Well, that's going to conclude this week's Focus Israel Report. Until we do it again, Shalom in Yeshua the Messiah. Amen.